Here are some lost ancient artifacts that were underwater for centuries until they were uncovered by a drought. After a Chinese reservoir was drained 10 feet in 2017, a 600-year-old Buddha carving was uncovered. Underwater archaeologists even found evidence of an ancient temple beneath the 12-foot statue. This ancient megalithic monument in Spain was revealed by a drought in 2022. The Spanish Stonehenge is up to 7,000 years old, some 2,000 years older than Stonehenge itself, but its true purpose remains unknown. A 500-year-old church emerged from a Mexican reservoir due to a drought that dropped the waterline by 80 feet. This 600-year-old Buddhist monument was uncovered when the water of China's Yangtze River dropped to 45% below its usual height. Last summer, a massive drought in Texas uncovered some fossilized footprints at Dinosaur Valley State Park, most likely belonging to a theropod called Acrocanthosaurus. The prints had been covered by water and sediment for over 113 million years. Archaeologists excavating an ancient Roman sewer in Bulgaria stumbled upon this statue of Hermes that remains incredibly intact after 2,000 years. Measuring 6'8" and only missing part of its right arm, the statue is believed to have been intentionally buried underground by local residents after an earthquake rocked the region in 388 CE. A Corinthian helmet from the Battle of Marathon was found with the warrior's skull still inside. The Pons Fabricius is the oldest surviving bridge from ancient Rome that's still in use to this day. The bridge is still in its original location and condition, as its last major repairs took place in 23 BC. This olive tree on the island of Crete has a trunk that's 15 feet in diameter and is likely 2,900 years old. That means this tree has survived through the writing of the Odyssey, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, and the birth of Christ, and amazingly still produces olives more than 2,000 years later. This is the incredibly disturbing reason why Jeffrey Jones isn't in the new Beetlejuice. Renowned 80s actor Jeffrey Jones became a cultural icon after playing Principal Edward Rooney in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. 2 years later, Tim Burton selected him to play Charles Dietz in the 1988 Beetlejuice, a role in which he once again excelled. His wife in the film, as played by Catherine O'Hara, reprised her role in the recent Beetlejuice, so why didn't Jones? Well, Jeffrey's career took a dark turn in 2002, when he was arrested for possession of CP and soliciting a 14-year-old boy to produce explicit images. Jones photographed the child over an 8-month span, paying him to pose undressed wearing a cowboy hat, holding stuffed animals, or dressed as a Native American. Jones pleaded not guilty to the possession charge and no contest to the charge of soliciting a minor, as his attorney argued that there was no allegation of improper physical contact. Jones was sentenced to 5 years probation, extensive counseling, and the requirement to register as a sex offender. Jeffrey's absence in the new Beetlejuice film was addressed early on, as his character's wife explains that Charles was in a plane crash and decapitated by a shark. Kim Jong-un's older brother Kim Jong-nam was supposed to be the next heir to North Korea's throne, but he's believed to have lost his position at the age of 30 after trying to get into Disneyland Japan with a fake passport. Because of the embarrassment he caused his father, Jong-nam was exiled from the country and later assassinated by the North Korean government after many failed attempts. In 2006, 27-year-old Ohio State medical student Brian Schaefer entered a bar with some friends. After security cams recorded him entering through the bar's only public entrance, Schaefer was never seen exiting the bar and has not been seen nor heard from since. Here's an example of a pillory, which was used as a form of capital punishment in 19th century China. The man in the photo can't reach his face with his hands, so he must rely on pedestrians to feed him and give him water like a dog. The device also made it incredibly hard to sleep comfortably, essentially torturing the prisoner until they died from starvation. Actors who went to the extreme, Part 2. To lose a third of his body weight for his role in The Machinist, where he weighed 120 pounds. Christian Bale pushed his body to extreme limits, consuming nothing but coffee, a single apple, and a can of tuna each day. His goal was to reach 100 pounds before producers had to force him to stop so that he wouldn't die. He also slept just 2 hours a night to enter the mind of an insomniac. After the drastic transformation, he then had to regain 100 pounds in 6 months to prepare for his role in Batman Begins, but had to lose 30 pounds again before filming because he'd bulked up too much. When Jamie Foxx played blind singer and songwriter Ray Charles in the 2004 biopic Ray, he was convinced to have his eyes glued shut to capture the full essence of a blind man. He He wore prosthetic eyelids for nearly the entire day, suffered from frequent panic attacks, and was left alone on set several times by crew members who forgot that he couldn't see. Fox was quoted saying, "Imagine having your eyes glued shut for 14 hours a day. That's your jail sentence." Here are some actors who went to the extreme to prepare for their roles. An Indian actor named Shyam risked his life to transform for a role. He went 9 straight days without sleep so that the tissues under his eyes would swell up. Leo DiCaprio nearly died in the process of filming The Revenant. To take on the role of Hugh Glass, Leo repeatedly camped out in the wilderness in freezing temps, slept in animal carcasses, and ate raw bison liver. He nearly froze to death on multiple occasions and said it was his toughest role to take on by far. While filming for The Grinch, the thick makeup and prosthetics made Jim Carrey feel like he was being buried alive each day. It became so brutal for him that they had to hire a former CIA agent to teach him techniques for coping with torture. The day after Shia LaBeouf landed his role in the war movie Fury, he joined the U.S. National Guard, got baptized, and got a tattoo that reads "Surrender to Jesus." Afterwards, he pulled his own tooth out, cut up his face with a knife, spent days watching horses die, and didn't bathe for 4 months. Lead singer of the Ramones, Joey Ramone, was born with a parasitic twin growing out of his back that was later removed through surgery. Joey was also diagnosed with OCD, schizophrenia, and Marfan syndrome, resulting in his frail health and striking physique. On the day of his assassination, at least 9 of JFK's Secret Service agents were recovering from an all-night bender that ended at 5 a.m. Their hangovers combined with sleep deprivation may have played a crucial role in the agents' inabilities to respond after the first shot. When 13-year-old Noah Crooks called 911 after murdering his mother, he told the operator, "I tried to grape her. I tried to grape her, but I couldn't do it." When 1930s musician Ross Colombo was accidentally shot and killed by his best friend, his siblings went to great lengths to hide the news from his mother, who suffered from a serious heart condition. They wrote fake letters to her and played records to simulate his radio show. This continued on for a decade until she passed away in 1944. In 1977, 20-year-old Oregon woman Colleen Stan was hitchhiking to her friend's birthday party when she was kidnapped by Cameron and Janice Hooker, trusting them because they had an infant daughter in their car. Long before this, the couple agreed that husband Cameron could capture a slave to tie up for his pleasure, and he had decided on Colleen. For the next 7 years, Colleen was repeatedly tortured and kept locked in a tiny wooden coffin under the couple's bed for up to 23 hours a day. Cameron forced her to sign her life away to slavery via contract, and convinced her that she was being watched by a powerful organization called the Company, which he claimed would painfully torture her and her family if she ever tried to escape. One day, 4 years after being kidnapped, Colleen was allowed to visit her family by herself, but she didn't reveal her situation to them due to her fear of the consequences. Her family simply thought she was involved in a cult, so they didn't want to pressure her to come home, fearing that she would stay away forever. The very next day, Colleen returned for a second visit with Cameron posing as her boyfriend, but again, nothing was done. 3 years later, Cameron wanted Colleen to become his second wife, which was a turning point for his wife Janice. In August of 1984, Janice secretly informed Colleen that they weren't part of the Company, and Colleen managed to escape soon afterwards. In the months that followed, Colleen didn't contact the police but continued to call Cameron routinely to give him a chance to reform. But 3 months later, Janice reported her husband to police and he received 100+ years in prison. In 1990, Florida woman Marlene Warren opened her front door to a clown holding flowers and balloons. After handing Marlene the gifts, the clown suddenly pulled out a gun and shot the woman in the face in front of her son. The case went cold for the next 27 years until a hair found in the evidence was traced to a woman living in Tennessee who was running a restaurant with the victim's ex-husband. Apparently the two were having an affair months before the murder and eventually got married themselves when it seemed like they were in the clear. This photo shows Muhammad al-Margradi begging for his life just moments before he was publicly executed with an AK-47. The man was convicted of raping and killing a 3-year-old girl, prompting a harsh response from the court. The execution drew a crowd of thousands of onlookers, some perched up on telephone poles or watching from rooftops. The victim's father said that he smiled and was filled with relief and satisfaction as the killer was pumped full of bullets. Nicknamed Chad, this absolute unit of a house cat suffers from myostatin-related hypertrophy, an extremely rare condition that causes muscles to grow excessively large. Its owner says he always makes sure the cat is well fed and taken care of to avoid any possible beef. This baby crocodile was born with an unusual mutation that gave it the tail of a mermaid. A fisherman in Maine found this translucent lobster. Scientists say the odds of this happening are about 1 in 100 million. This record-breaking 10-inch long tadpole found in an Arizona swamp never evolved into a bullfrog. Nicknamed Goliath, experts say it's most likely due to a hormonal mutation that'll prevent it from metamorphosizing until death. This octopus with 85 tentacles was found near Japan in 1957. Once thought to be a separate subspecies, the king cheetah is an African cheetah with a rare mutation of the fur. Discovered in 1926, this badass freak of nature has only been seen in the wild 6 times. In September of 2021, 3-year-old Sutton Mosser was stabbed to death by her mother. The 23-year-old woman claimed that the cartoon character SpongeBob told her to do it. During Hurricane Camille in 1969, the rainfall was so heavy in Virginia that birds were drowning in trees. The storm dumped 28 inches of rain over a 5-hour span and took the lives of over 100 people. After his wife died during a long route to the hospital, Dashrath Manji devoted his life to making the route shorter. He spent 22 years carving a 300-foot path through a mountain using only a hammer and chisel, and managed to shorten the journey from 34 miles to 9. 17-year-old Lisa Noland planned on ending her life just before she was abducted by serial killer Bobby Joe Long. He raped her several times and held her hostage for 26 hours until she managed to escape. Lisa got the man captured as the traumatic experience gave her a new lease on life and inspired her to become a cop. This man accidentally entered the real-life backrooms and was found dead 3 weeks later. In January of 2017, 71-year-old Bernard Gore was supposed to meet his wife and daughter at a Westfield mall in Sydney, Australia, but never showed up. He'd apparently been doing some shopping on his own before they showed up, then completely disappeared without a trace. After frantically searching for her husband who suffered from dementia, Angela Gore filed a missing persons report with local authorities. Bernard was last seen by a store clerk who said the man looked confused on the morning of his disappearance. Investigators were initially hopeful when surveillance footage showed Bernard walking towards a fire escape, but they didn't realize that through the exit was a complete labyrinth of stairwells, confusing hallways, and self-locking doors. In fact, the entire fire escape stretches for 8 miles, and numerous mall shoppers have been lost down there before, with one woman describing it as a maze from a nightmare. Accordingly, it took police 3 weeks to finally locate Bernard's lifeless body in the stairwell. He was likely wandering around the fire escape for up to an entire week before eventually succumbing to natural causes. Bernard's death was officially ruled the result of a misadventure. In 1987, police responded to Illinois father Russell Dardine's home after he failed to report to work. There they found the dead bodies of his pregnant wife Ruby and their son, who were both victims of a brutal beating. Ruby was beaten so badly that she prematurely went into labor, and even the newborn baby was beaten to death as well. Initially, Keith was the most obvious suspect until his body was found shot dead in a nearby field with his genitals mutilated. Serial killer Tommy Lynn Sells later confessed to the murders but was never formally charged, so the case remains cold. In 1980, John Favera, the neighbor of mafia boss John Gotti, accidentally ran over and killed the mobster's 12-year-old son Frank. Although it was ruled an accident, Favera went missing that same year and was never seen nor heard from again. Former mobster Charles Carneglia later claimed that Favera was abducted, tortured, and slowly dismembered with a chainsaw while he was still alive. His remains were then stuffed inside a barrel filled with concrete and dumped in the ocean. After the divorce of his parents, Jack Black got mixed in with the wrong crowd and became severely addicted to cocaine at the young age of 14. It got so bad that he would steal money from his mom to fuel his addiction, but was eventually able to kick the habit after switching schools. Jack also lost his gay older brother Howard to AIDS at the height of the epidemic in 1989. In 2009, an Italian brain surgeon was having a heart attack in the middle of performing a delicate operation. But instead of getting treatment, he powered through the surgery upon realizing that his patient may have died if he stopped, and both made a full recovery. In 2009, U.S. Marine Brian Dennis was stationed in Iraq when he met a stray desert dog named Nubs. After someone brutally stabbed the dog with a screwdriver, the Marine nursed him back to health despite expecting him to die. They developed such a strong bond that when the unit left, Nubs picked up Brian's scent and trekked 70 miles through an active desert war zone to be with him. Dennis soon shipped the dog to his home in San Diego, and the two have been best friends ever since. In 2004, 11-year-old Japanese schoolgirl Natsumi Tsuji led her best friend into an empty classroom where she promised to show her a new game. That's when Natsumi blindfolded the girl and ruthlessly slit her throat with a box cutter until she bled to death. Natsumi then returned to her classroom covered in blood while still holding the murder weapon. Spanish woman Aurora Rodriguez conceived her daughter as an experiment to try and create the perfect human. Her daughter Hildegard was able to read at age 2, spoke 4 languages by age 8, joined law school at 13, and became a professor there when she turned 18. But when Hildegard eventually tried to gain independence from her mother, Aurora concluded that the experiment was a failure and shot the girl dead while she was sleeping. Aurora was later infamously quoted saying, "The sculptor, after discovering the most minimal imperfection in his work, destroys it." She was sentenced to 26 years in prison, spending most of them at a mental asylum. In 1990, rock and roll pioneer Chuck Berry bought a restaurant in Missouri that didn't go very well for him. Shortly after opening, he was sued by several women who claimed he installed a video camera in the ladies' bathroom. Berry opted for a class action settlement with 59 women that cost him over $1.2 million. He claimed he set up the camera to catch a worker he suspected was stealing from his restaurant. But when police raided his home, they found several videotapes of women using the bathroom, and at least one of them was a minor. During the SARS outbreak in 2004, a Taiwanese woman made a bold attempt to protect herself from the virus. She bathed in a tub filled with 40% alcohol, hoping this would kill any of the potential germs on her body. She laid down in the fluid at 11 p.m. and was discovered dead by her family the next morning. An autopsy revealed that her blood alcohol level was 1.35%, meaning she absorbed a significant amount of alcohol through her skin. These are some of the most horrific drawings made by survivors of the Hiroshima nuclear blast. This picture shows a horde of people who had turned red like demons trying to cool their burns off in a tub of water, not realizing that the water was extremely hot from the blast and would end up boiling them alive. This drawing is pure nightmare fuel. There were many accounts of zombie-like people who limped for miles begging for water, while their melted skin was drooping down from their bodies. This picture depicts a pile of victims who jumped into a river to cool off after being badly burned by the blast. Tragically, most ended up drowning in the boiling hot water due to a lack of strength, and from the pain of their skin literally being peeled off by the current. The 16-year-old artist of this one wrote, "The body was so deeply charred that the gender was unrecognizable, yet the person was still weakly writhing in pain. I had to avert my eyes from the unbearable sight, but it entrenched itself in my memory for the rest of my life." Here's a 1990 photo of murderer Dalton Prejean with his son in prison, shortly before he was executed via electric chair for killing a state trooper. 12 years later, that same son, Dalton Prejean Jr., was convicted of the 2001 death of a 14-month-old baby. He's currently serving a 60-year sentence in the same prison that his father was executed in. Actress Tina Fey received her chin scar at the age of 5 when a stranger randomly entered her front yard while she was playing and slashed her across the face. The man was never identified nor seen again. A python from Australia became addicted to meth after living in a drug lab for several years. Police busted the operation before sending the snake to rehab for 7 months. In Japan, women are traditionally banned from entering a sumo ring under any circumstances. This tradition is so strictly imposed that in 2018, 2 women were forced to leave the ring, even though they were performing CPR on a mayor who had collapsed inside. 5 people were just arrested in connection with Matthew Perry's sudden death. The Friends actor was found face down in the corner of his LA hot tub after an accidental ketamine overdose last October. The actor had been undergoing ketamine therapy to treat anxiety and depression, but his last session took place more than a week before his death, meaning he was receiving injections illegally. After an underground drug operation was uncovered, charges were filed against Perry's personal assistant, 2 doctors, and 2 drug dealers, who were all allegedly involved in the distribution of the ketamine that killed him. The doctors reportedly preyed on Perry's history of addiction in the final months of his life, providing him with the anesthetic drug in amounts they knew were dangerous. According to medical examiners, the amount of ketamine in Perry's body was equivalent to the amount used for general anesthesia during surgery. Perry's family have thanked law enforcement for taking his case seriously and look forward to justice taking its course. In 2023, 92-year-old dementia patient Tom McDonald poured washing detergent over his bowl of cereal thinking it was milk. After eating most of the bowl, he told his daughter he wasn't feeling well and was soon rushed to the hospital, where he later died from acute toxicity. While 33-year-old actress Carol Lombard was on a war bond tour in 1942, she won a coin toss that determined she and her group would return home by plane instead of by train. Tragically, their flight would end up crashing into a mountain near Las Vegas, killing all 22 passengers on board, including 15 U.S. Army soldiers. 28-year-old Caitlin Jensen's life was changed forever after just a routine visit to the chiropractor. She went to have her neck adjusted for stiffness, during which 4 arteries in Caitlin's neck were accidentally dissected, resulting in a horrible stroke. She was reportedly without a pulse for 10 minutes until she could be revived by doctors. Caitlin was left with nearly full body paralysis, only capable of blinking her eyes and moving her left thumb. In 2019, Salman Mirza and his ex wanted to hook up, but they didn't have a condom, so they decided to use epoxy glue to seal it instead. His friends later found him unconscious and drove him to the hospital, where he died of multiple organ failures due to the faux condom. In 1982, an Arizona man named David Grundman died while shooting a 26-foot-tall saguaro cactus to try and knock it down. But a 500-pound arm of the cactus fell on him, crushing him to death. In 2001, a man from Utah had been driving a van full of friends on a mountain when his brakes suddenly failed. But rather than trying to save them, he tried to save himself by jumping out of the car to his death, while all of his friends ended up surviving. In 2001, a Florida man was shot dead while testing out a bulletproof potion that he received from a witch doctor. After applying the potion for 2 weeks, he asked a friend to shoot him so that he could finally test it out. Turns out the potion was just cherry Kool-Aid, and the man died instantly. In 2018, 16-year-old Kevin Watkins was lagging horribly while attempting to play Xbox in his Georgia family's home. In an effort to improve the speed, he decided to change the Wi-Fi password to prevent others from using it and slowing down the connection while he was gaming. Soon enough, an argument broke out between Kevin and his mom, escalating to a point where his older sister Alexis had to step in to prevent Kevin from physically harming their mother. Tragically, Kevin placed Alexis in a strong chokehold and refused to let go despite his younger brother and mother begging for him to stop. By the time police arrived 15 minutes later, Alexis was no longer moving or responsive, but Kevin still had her in a chokehold. She had been starved of oxygen for a lengthy amount of time, resulting in extreme brain damage. Alexis was quickly rushed to the hospital, but was soon pronounced dead from asphyxiation. Kevin was tried for murder and sentenced to life in prison for the tragic incident. In 1998, Dana Carvey underwent open heart surgery to clear a blocked artery, but the surgeon operated on the wrong blood vessel. After spending 6 months recovering from the life-threatening botch, he won a $7.5 million lawsuit against the hospital and donated all of it to charity. In 2015, an Italian grandma accidentally sent 2 adults and 3 children to the hospital after making them hot cocoa that had expired in 1990. Pearl Jam's song Jeremy was based on the real-life classroom suicide of 15-year-old Texas student Jeremy Wade. He was released from a mental hospital once his parents' insurance money ran out, so he brought a revolver to class and shot himself in front of 30 students. In 2013, a collection of files revealed that the U.S. government lobotomized over 2,000 veterans against their will after World War II. They were lobotomized for reasons such as PTSD, depression, schizophrenia, and homosexuality. Actress Brittany Murphy and her husband both mysteriously passed away from pneumonia and severe anemia in their home only 5 months apart. Murphy's mom believes both of them were victims of toxic mold. Jonah Hill had to be hospitalized while filming The Wolf of Wall Street after snorting too much fake cocaine. In 2021, an 82-year-old man from Austria had the wrong leg amputated during surgery. The man was told he would still need his other leg amputated as well. The hospital said the incident occurred as a result of a sequence of unfortunate circumstances. Here's a devastating photo of a Colorado police officer distracting a little girl after her dad lost his life in a car accident. Judy Melanik is a medical examiner who identified hundreds of bodies after the 9/11 attacks, most of which were just scraps of flesh or pieces of limbs. She was called in August of 2002 because someone had found a foot bone on top of a skyscraper a quarter-mile away from Ground Zero. In 2003, a woman found a painting in the trash on a New York City curb. She felt it had power, so she took it home without knowing anything about its value or origin. After holding on to it for 4 years, she eventually discovered that it was a very valuable Mexican painting that was stolen in 1987. So she contacted authorities and received a $15,000 reward plus a percentage of its sale price of over $1 million. In August of 2010, a 13-year-old British teenager was struck by lightning at 1313 on Friday the 13th. He was the only one struck amongst a crowd of 150,000 people who were watching an air show. In 2014, a 39-year-old Brazilian woman named Adriana wanted to find her mother who abandoned her as a baby. So she went on a TV show and ended up finding her mom through the power of the internet. The two had an emotional reunion, but her mother revealed that she had also abandoned Adriana's infant brother, Leandro. In a bizarre twist, Adriana's husband turned out to be her brother, Leandro. But despite the pair being siblings, they vowed to never separate. Jeanette McCurdy has described the relationship she had with her mother Deborah as both emotionally and sexually abusive. When Jeanette was 3 years old, her mother was diagnosed with breast cancer and underwent multiple surgeries and transplants. As a result, Deborah would perform routine vaginal and breast exams on Jeanette and never allowed her to shower alone until she turned 17. Living in poverty, her mother forced Jeanette into acting when she was 6 years old to financially support the family, and because Deborah had always wanted to become famous herself. McCurdy says that her mother was obsessed with making her a star and introduced Jeanette to a calorie restriction once she turned 11, leading to various eating disorders that Jeanette still struggles with, including anorexia and bulimia. McCurdy says that she refused to appear in the revival series of iCarly only because she didn't want to be reminded of her mother's abuse during the original show. Just last year, Jeanette released a book with the title I'm Glad My Mom Died 9 years after she passed away from breast cancer. The photo on the right shows a Houston police officer reacting outside the home where Andrea Yates drowned her 5 children in 2001. She started by holding 3 of her boys underwater in her bathtub until they stopped struggling. She then drowned her 6-month-old Mary, whom she left floating in the tub. Her last living child, Noah, soon walked in and asked what was wrong with Mary, then ran when he realized what was going on. But Yates quickly caught up to the 7-year-old and drowned him as well. Afterwards, she laid the lifeless bodies of her children together in her bed. She then called the police, repeatedly saying she needed an officer but refusing to say why. During the trial, the defense argued that Yates was severely mentally ill and not in control of her actions during the murders. She was in a deeply delusional state, believing she needed to murder her children to prevent them from going to hell. In 2006, she was found not guilty by reason of insanity and committed to a high-security mental hospital in Texas where she remains to this day. Keanu Reeves' sister Kim was diagnosed with the deadly blood cancer leukemia in 1991. In response, he sold his home to move closer to her, cleaned her house, cooked her meals, and provided all of her necessary medications. Once she recovered, Keanu started a private charity to fund cancer research in children's hospitals. In 2009, he was interviewed saying, "I don't like to attach my name to it, I just let the foundation do what it does." Frank Sinatra died the night of Seinfeld's finale, and his ambulance made it to the hospital in record time since there was no traffic due to everyone watching the show. Hans Scharf, the most successful Nazi interrogator in World War II, never physically harmed an enemy soldier. Instead, he treated them with respect and kindness, taking them for walks, letting them visit their captured comrades in the hospital, and even letting captured pilots go on test flights. His methods were very successful since virtually everyone ended up talking. This photo taken in 2004 shows Deborah Garlick enjoying the island paradise of Phi Phi in Thailand. But soon afterwards, a massive tsunami struck the area, killing around 230,000 people in total. This was the last photo taken on Deborah's camera before she was tragically swept away by the wave. This peaceful photo of the New York City skyline was taken from the Manhattan Bridge around 8:30 a.m. on September 11, 2001. Just 16 minutes later, a plane would crash into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Here's a pic of volcanologist David A. Johnston 13 hours before he was killed by the eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980. He was the first to report the eruption from an observation post 6 miles away, transmitting the message, "Vancouver, Vancouver, this is it," just before he was swept away by a lateral blast traveling at near supersonic speed. He had spent the last several months of his life studying the volcano, and his alert likely saved thousands of lives. In 2018, Kaylee Mudhart ripped out her own eyeballs and smashed them with her hands during a meth-induced psychotic episode. Kaylee had been awake for almost 48 hours straight, snorting and injecting a concoction of tainted methamphetamine which caused horrific hallucinations. These photos were taken at the wedding of Heather and David Mosher at a Connecticut chapel in 2017. Heather was battling advanced breast cancer but found the strength to marry the love of her life just 18 hours before passing away. In 1975, 197 passengers on a Japan Airlines flight became sick after eating food contaminated with staph bacteria. 144 of them were so ill that they required hospitalization, while 30 of them ended up in critical condition. Turns out one of the cooks who prepared the food had infected lesions on one of his hands. The catering manager later took his own life upon finding out that one of his cooks was responsible. He was the only fatality as a result of the incident. This photo taken last month shows 7-year-old Arthur Bittencourt giving a thumbs up while playing in a pile of poisonous limestone powder in Brazil. Just minutes later, Arthur was tragically fighting for his life after accidentally inhaling particles of the toxic substance. He was quickly rushed to the hospital and pronounced dead on arrival. In 2022, Ukrainian woman Irina Filkina had her photo taken after getting a manicure for Valentine's Day. A few weeks later, she was killed by a tank while pushing her bicycle in the town of Bucha, and her body was identified by her manicure. This was the chilling moment when a laser pointer was shown on Elijah Clayton during a Madden tournament at a Florida mall in 2018. The shooter had lost a game and refused to shake his opponent's hand before leaving the tournament. He later returned with a handgun and fired into the crowd before turning the gun on himself. He killed 2 people including Clayton and injured 10 more. In the case that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were left stranded on the moon, NASA planned on cutting off communication with them. They didn't want to record how the men chose to die, leaving them to either run out of oxygen or take their own lives with no further earthly contact. FDNY Ladder 3 was one of the first units to show up at the World Trade Center on 9/11. Its crew of 11 men sadly perished in the collapse of the North Tower, and now their truck is on display in the 9/11 Museum. In April of 2015, 28-year-old Shayna Sims gained access to a funeral home in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She pretended to be a makeup artist to access the body of Tabitha Lynch. Apparently, Shayna resented Lynch and suspected that her husband had been having an affair with her. So as payback, Sims decided to mutilate Lynch's body, cutting up her face and removing multiple organs and chunks of her hair. Court sentenced her to 16 years in prison for unlawfully removing a body part from a corpse. In 2010, the teenage daughter of Michelle Kalina came across something horrifying in her mother's closet, the decomposed remains of 5 babies. Over the course of 14 years, Michelle gave birth to at least 5 children, ending their lives immediately after they were born. She was sentenced to between 20 and 40 years in prison. When Frank Zappa was a child, he always played with the mercury that his chemist father brought home from work, often covering his entire bedroom floor with the element. But childhood exposure to mercury is now known to cause prostate cancer as an adult, which Zappa would end up dying from at the age of 52. In 1978, over 2,000 students from Pennsylvania tried to set the world record for the largest game of tug-of-war. But instead, the 2,000-foot rope snapped, releasing several thousand pounds of stored energy. Nearly 200 students were wounded, 5 had their fingertips severed, and hundreds more received second-degree burns. The Scold's Bridle was a device used to publicly humiliate women until the 19th century. On the inside, the device had a metal plate that would press down on the tongue and prevent the wearer from speaking. It was placed on women who were said to be difficult to keep them quiet and prevent them from gossiping. These punishing shoes were a type of medieval torture device. The victim would have to stand on their tippy toes for as long as they could, before falling back and having rusty spikes jammed into their heel. Rat torture was another medieval method that involved putting a bunch of rats into a cage that was strapped to the victim's stomach. The top of the cage was then slowly heated, forcing the rats to burrow through the victim's body to escape the heat. During the Middle Ages, there was a form of torture where the victim's feet were covered in salt and a goat would start licking them. Known as tickle torture, it would become extremely painful once the skin was worn away by the rough tongue of the goat. creating a wound with salt slowly trickling in. The 2021 photo of Alec Baldwin breaking down in tears after firing a prop gun that killed the director of photography on the movie set of Rust. The tragic incident happened as a result of catastrophic failures in safety procedures on the set. The woman who was responsible for checking the firearms was only 24 years old and had very little experience in her role. Rust was her second film as lead armorer, since she had previously worked on another Western film called The Old Way, where she received multiple safety complaints from the cast and crew. She also admitted on a podcast that she felt overwhelmed and underprepared for her job on Rust. The live round that killed Helena Hutchins and injured Joel Souza was not supposed to be on the set at all. The production had a very strict rule that banned any live ammunition on the premises, and only blanks or dummy rounds could be used. But it was later revealed that some of the crew members used the same guns for target practice with live rounds during their off hours, and had failed to properly clean and inspect the weapons before returning them to the armory.